This year I have specifically asked for no presents. Not to be uber cool or anything, but I'm just not the kind of person who gets satisfaction from owning something. Yet, like some cruel and perverse trick, I know that this means more stress for my family as they refuse to accept feeling guilty on Christmas Day, plus more expense as they buy from the wide range of markups I didn't ask for, probably using price rather than taste as a guide to whether it will cut the social mustard. I'd be strangely excited by the prospect of anything from the whole universe of novelty socks to vouchers and soapy gift sets if it wasn't all perfectly regiftable. But still, what a time to be alive. Cavemen would have a clubbing party over this stuff. Merry Christmas. Have you seen the shite that major stores are flogging as gifts these days? Of course you have. Your dad, granddad, brother, or son's small space in the house looks exactly like the pile of crap in the centre of John Lewis. On the one hand, they're a marvel. Somebody was given the thankless task of creating a deck of cards, all with vaguely witty or rude quotes, and once you've come up with 10 of those, the rest really are quite a challenge. I face the same level of dread with each successive paragraph. Yet, like my paragraphs, the job of creating a trivial gift filled with pointless insults in the price range of 10 to 15 quid warrants a tip of the hat, but no more. I say gifts because I think there's a good social linguistic distinction between them and presents. A present to me implies that I know what the person wants. A gift, the beating heart of our capitalistic culture, says of me that I bought this instead of shame. There's no way I can imagine anybody else buying it for themselves, except when chancing around for the opportunity to say, look, I'm not being disrespectful, this suddenly jumped out right at the last minute, and as clutter goes, I do think it's rather nice, and in my desperation, I'm completely convinced you'll see this as being your kind of thing too. Of course it isn't. It would be ideal for sitting on a cluttered shelf surrounded by world's best dive mugs. In case it had escaped your notice, this is capitalism. In an ideal world, every company would think about what its customer wants or needs and devises only that product. But a puzzle that locks up your bottle of rosé until you solve or break it does not meet that mission statement. Instead, we're enablers for a whole enterprise of things only a person desperate for a gift would buy. So maybe that means they are needed. So we are in an ideal world. Things aren't unnecessary, said Jeff Bezos. It's our fault. We go along with it. Otherwise there wouldn't be an industry for ever more niche monopoly themes. There'll be one for Ormskirk next. So, I'm not blaming capitalism yet. I'll get onto that later, obviously. The fact that we're willing to pay anything up to £20 for a last minute gift, and sometimes up to 50 for if it's a woman, is a marketing gap you'd have to be an idiot not to exploit. I've mentioned before that the simplicity of human manipulation can be hilariously straightforward, and needs recognising. We argue about what free will means and whether dogs, crabs, or even Jeff Bezos are sentient, but our social behaviours are at odds with our freedom. The Homo sapiens' desire to not feel shame, guilt, loneliness, robbed of power, fear, or ridiculed would drive most of us to do almost anything, and indeed is backed up by the prop our purchases give to the economy every Christmas. Don't get me wrong, I love and adore Christmas. It's wonderful to spend time giving presents, eating the best food all year, decorating the house to be as cosy as a Victorian palace, whilst being with people you care for, and crucially, feeling the huge joy of loved ones opening their real presents. Its only vice is a minor apprehension for the stocking filler gifts that have been made to imitate vague expense in a desperate attempt to feel less like, and cost more than, the same paraphernalia you find in the middle aisle at Aldi. It's still the best time of year, and I'm unshakable on that. And don't let me lead you to think the middle aisle at Aldi is some saint. It just sits at the low end of gifts. The more forgivable ones, you know. The kind of gifts we buy for ourselves on a whim. The Deliveroo app favours the same model, I think. Mine has been moving larger and larger down mug bars to the top of the page, but, I suppose, their harvesting of my data and constantly goading me into treating myself to diabetes is a small price to pay not to have to speak to a familiar judgmental human at the store. If you've ever wondered about the mind of a cheapskate, here's my insight. Money isn't the focus, practicality is. If a product sacrifices function for form, it becomes repulsive. That's not to say it can't be beautiful. Cars are entirely useful objects, and yet some are also sublime. These concepts are not mutually exclusive, and I'm not immune to beauty. but I am to anything unnecessary. It's the same for me with fashion, though if you know me, you didn't need that heads up. For me, being fashionable for the longest period of time is the most practical clothes can be, so I tend to see fads to the end, then maybe purchase whichever version of the fashion looked least like the fad itself and therefore is the most timeless. It's not going to get me on the front page of Vogue, I know, but I would call it true style even as your sides split like skinny jeans at an all-you-can-eat. My problem is, though you may see it as my saviour, what a cheapskate does buy doesn't last very long. And here, incidentally, is your customary economics lesson. We're in the habit of replacing things that do their job perfectly well. There are two forces behind this. The first is planned obsolescence, or consumer engineering, and this can lead to good products but for a higher price if it works really well. Looking at you, iPhones. But the majority of the time they aren't because of the second point. Even with inflation, we generally don't like spending more than what we have done before to replace something we own. So, quality has to suffer. Yet aesthetic appeal is still what matters most, followed by price, followed by quality and functionality. To respond to demand, trends, fashions, and must-have gadgets, what is a Stanley Cup, seriously? Do Marine FC play for it? Must be made fast, because a product is no good if it runs out. So, to keep ahead of trends, labour costs increase, running costs will increase, materials with demand and inflation cost will increase. But the product needs to carry on looking the same and, crucially, costing the same. Otherwise, it won't sell if someone else has a cheaper product, and someone will copy it. Long-term quality and functionality rarely drive demand, so they suffer. The only alternative is to make us want it so much we try to mortgage the tennis court-sized surface area of our lungs to get hold of it. I wonder if you can guess these exceptions. The only things that are consistently way above inflation. High-end fashion, cars, phones, and, generally speaking, in those instances, the aesthetic appeal and the crack addict relief it bestows on customers can keep quality a little higher. Which is great, but it's reflected in the price. Paradoxically, we force the quality of the products we keep longest lower, and the ones we'll swap for something shinier in 6 months the highest. This is called consumer engineering for a reason. It's passing the cost onto us, turning a perfectly usable product into a VHS tape as soon as a new one comes out. It's a brilliant piece of market engineering for those who make products that should last a long time, but then their profit graph would look like the kind of cliff coyote would run off the edge of while carrying an anvil. First developed as clothes fashions, then picked up by the motor industry where they discovered they could make their own cars fashionable in every sense. Their goal became to make last year's model literally look like a dinosaur wearing a ruff and codpiece by advertising the tweaks of the new one just right. What followed grew into the following. iPhones have square edges. Then iPhones have rounded edges. And iPhones have square edges again. And, drumroll if you guessed, what the iPhone's edges will be like in a few short years' time. You get the idea. This is, of course, horrific to the environment, and our cash-strapped AI machines are taking our jobs and we can't work in the EU either. Personal finances. Again, another example of how unfair I think it is that companies are allowed to easily manipulate our will under the guise of marketing. While they are overdosing on their personalised cookie targeting, it's hard to look at their stock market growth and tell me they aren't exploiting us. The only ones I feel happy for here are their comparatively safe employees. Hang in there, guys. Parts of the world are starting to introduce right to repair laws, so consumers need to trade in less if something breaks, slows down, won't hold charge, but definitely not if it's just unfashionable. Great, but if it turns out to be prohibitively expensive to change the battery on an old phone and, let's face it, a hassle, then I don't see it doing much good. Car parts and garages have been around almost as long as car manufacturers have, but the brands haven't gone under just because everyone's still running the Nissan Micra they got as their first car. Mine was red. Some repairs happen, but amazingly, a £30,000 car often seems more appealing than a £2,000 repair. Even I am, however, not immune to the hassle-free route. I've been with the same bank since my first account was opened, the same phone provider, and the same energy company since we moved in. I mean, what sort of a pervert loves filling out forms and shopping for something they can't see or touch? I'm a total skinflint, but I'd expend even more money for someone to take my bank details, change my provider to the cheapest one every year, entirely without my knowledge. I'd also pay Google and Microsoft to keep updating my phone and laptop properly forever, but they won't because they want me to upgrade. I understand their argument that they can't keep updates coming for free forever, but when they stop after 3 years on a phone that could realistically last for 15, that's where I'd like to exercise my right to give them some more money, just not equal to the £1,000 I'd need to exchange for a phone these days. I'd like to proclaim the truly gratifying benefits these savings might have by suggesting the money go instead to a charity this Christmas, but, if I'm honest, I certainly won't be doing any such thing until the number in my account contains enough digits to make me vote Tory. Nor will I be doing donations in someone else's name who would probably prefer to see fewer digits in their own overdraft after searching all December for a gift equal to the pleasure of seeing my brave face on Christmas Day. And on that cheery note of Scroogicity, miserliness, I sincerely wish you the most fabulous Christmas break. If you need me to put anything else straight, I'll be in my micro wearing my skinny jeans, paying for everything with chip and pin at a John Bon Jovi concert that I received as a gift.